What's going on, Orchard students? Nate here. I want to start you guys off this week by telling you guys a story, a little bit about myself. So, I graduated high school in 2017 from Brighton High. Woo woo! Any Brighton people out there? But, you know, it was kind of a scary season of life, right? Because it was like, man, what am I doing for school? I kind of knew at that point, but really didn't know. And I got to this point where I was like, all right, I'm going to this school called GCU, Grand Canyon University in Phoenix, Arizona. Seems pretty awesome, right? Awesome weather, it was great, it was beautiful, but man, let me tell you, it was really scary for me because I have grown up in Colorado my whole life. We've moved a couple of times, but literally within probably like 20 miles. Like we lived in Lochbuie, then lived in Brighton, and then we moved again, but it's still in Brighton. So I was comfortable, I knew my surroundings, and I wasn't afraid for a lot of my life, at least for moving out of state. So now here comes the point in my life where I am about to move out of state. And not just 20 miles away, I am moving, oh man, what is it, like 800 miles or something like that to Phoenix, Arizona? I don't know, look it up on Google Maps or Apple Maps. But it was a long ways away and I was not gonna be around my family anymore. I couldn't be comforted or hang out with them like I usually did. So I'm at this period of my life where I was just scared. Honestly, I was. Even though I was excited to have something new in my life, there was a part of me that was afraid. See, in this series, we're talking about vibes, right? Vibes is about our emotions and our feelings and how we're feeling in this moment, right? You always talk about, that's a vibe. Yeah, exactly. That is what we're talking about. So these emotions or periods of how we feel, right? So today, what I want to talk to you guys about is a little bit like my story. Something, our emotions, not just any other emotion, but this one that really likes to take a hold of us and sometimes wreck the moment, and that's fear. See, I think we've all experienced fear in one way or another, right? Maybe you've experienced fear. Usually it's a negative, right? We don't like fear. We don't like to be fearful of things, but maybe it's wrecked a relationship, a friendship in your life. Maybe it's kept you from doing something that was super cool, but just fear sank over you. See, fear, yes, we don't like fear, but we can recognize this. Fear is what is a part of us that makes us human. It's okay to be fearful, to be honest. It is really okay because we have fear and we know it can make us human. See, there's parts of that emotion that kind of come out that push us sometimes to do things that we wouldn't normally do though, right? Maybe you're an outgoing type and you're like, I'm not gonna let fear stop me. So you feel fear and you're like, I'm gonna do it, right? Well, sometimes that emotion can push us to do things that we usually don't do, right? And we go forward and it makes us dream. But there's the hope side, but then there's also the fear side. And then fear comes with maybe the what ifs, right? It's about future. I think a lot of us aren't really too keen on the future because we don't know what's gonna happen, right? So with fear, that fear side of that emotion becomes the what ifs. And I think you know what I'm talking about. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if I don't do as well I'm supposed to do? What if this happens? Again, what ifs? And that is fear. So sometimes those what ifs make us crazy, right? It kind of gets boggled in our mind. And maybe you're like me, I think about those what ifs a lot. I'm a planner, I like to plan things, I like to know what's going on. But we have all these what ifs. So that's the awesome part though about today. See, we have this guy named Jesus, and he's mentioned in the Bible a lot. And Jesus, the fully God, fully man, he's the Son of God. He talks a lot about fear, and he actually not just talks about it, but he's with people, his best friends that are put in these situations, and he shows what fear means and who he is in control of that. So we're gonna talk about a couple passages because we maybe look at the one that says fear not. Okay, sounds pretty simple, right? But it might not be that simple. Again, we're gonna look at some passages, so don't just look at one passage in the Bible. Let's look at multiple where we see fear. Jesus' best friends, the 12 disciples, in these moments of fear and what Jesus says to them. So this is one passage that Jesus says in Matthew 10:16 And it says this, I'm going to send you out like sheep among wolves. Okay, give you a little context. So Jesus is about to send out his 12 disciples to villages, to people, to spread his word, to heal people and everything like that. Sounds pretty awesome. But Jesus says this, I'm going to send you like sheep among wolves. Okay, wolves are predators, right? It's kind of scary. I don't know if I'd like want to be sent out. And they're not just wolves, but we're sheep. Like that's what he's saying to the 12 disciples. They're like, wait, what? We're sheep and you're the predator, we're the prey. So that means they're gonna devour us probably. Like, again, when wolf sees a sheep, it's probably going to eat it, right? Well, Jesus in this passage, he's saying this and he's saying there's gonna be some fear with it. But in context of a bigger story right before this, Jesus actually has them within this moment, within a boat, right? So they're in the sea, and give you some context, they're all going around, Jesus is sleeping, and in Matthew 8:24 says this, suddenly a furious storm came up on the lake so that the waves swept over the boat. So crazy storm, everything's like, the winds are crazy, the waves are going crazy. Again, these aren't boats like we think of them today. They're not made of metal, they're not made of steel, they're made of wood. Something that's, I don't know, it's like a sailboat, I guess you could say. But giant waves are going to happen. And Jesus' disciples are like really afraid. Can you imagine this? Can you imagine what is going through their minds? And then where's Jesus in this moment? So they all of a sudden, naturally, they wake up Jesus. He's sleeping. They wake him up and they say, Lord, save us, we're going to drown. Obviously, disciples are a little frustrated. They're like, all right, we believe you're an almighty God, that you have power, help us. And then what does Jesus do? He says this, he says, you of little faith, why are you so afraid? In verse 26, I can't imagine what the disciples are thinking here. They're like, really? That's all you're gonna say to us? Like, oh, you little faith, like, why are you so afraid? Come on. Jesus, obviously, it makes sense to be afraid in this moment. Again, they're human. But then they're forgetting who Jesus is, right? So no matter how scary the situation was or the circumstances are for us, Jesus stays calm. Then Matthew says that Jesus spoke to the wind and waves. He had power over those natural things that we see that we usually can't control, right? Can you control the rain? No. Jesus controls these things, the wind and the waves, and he told them to calm down, and the disciples were just baffled. They're amazed, and they say this, what kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey them. In a moment, their confidence in Jesus was more capable than whatever they were afraid of. So they believed in Jesus no matter what was going on. They were like, wow, this guy has more power than winds or waves. The things that we can't control, like our fear, Jesus controls. So going back to the conversation of Jesus talking to the disciples and saying, you're gonna be sheep among wolves, he also says this in Matthew 10:28. He says, do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. In other words, if you're going to be afraid of something, don't be afraid of man. Be afraid of God, like the one that can control those things. Be afraid of that. He's trying to say, remember that boat ride? Remember that scary moment and how powerful I actually really am? Like again, those things, don't be afraid of them because I am better than them. So he goes on and says in Matthew 10:29-31, says this, are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground outside your Father's care. And even the very hairs of your head are numbered. So don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. Again, that's Matthew 10:29-31. Jesus is saying, God's paying attention to you and how you feel. Don't be afraid because you are worth more to him. He knows the number of hairs on that. What? You're telling me God knows every single, there's a lot of hair. I don't have a lot of hair, but I had hair. I don't know what you want to say. But like God, girls, guys, if you have hair on your head, God knows the number of hairs that are in your head. You're worth more than 2 pennies. So remember that God is paying attention to you and knows how you feel, because God knows all about your fears. And he knows what you're in the middle of it. And he's with you in the middle of it. So Jesus isn't done teaching them, right? So they're on another field trip, and Jesus tells the disciples to get another boat. But this time, he's not in the boat with them. He's like, I'll meet you on the other side. Don't know how Jesus is gonna go over there, but he says, I'll meet you on the other side. So they're in this boat in the Sea of Galilee, and they're going, and again, another crazy windstorm, something they can't control is among them, and they are fearful. And then they also see this person out in the water. They're like, who is that? Then they realize it's Jesus. He's walking on water. Crazy, right? And they're like, what is going on? And so Matthew records that the disciples were actually terrified. But then Jesus, he says something that gets their attention, right? And we've heard it before. It says this, take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid. That's Matthew 14:27. Jesus is reminding them of all the lessons that they've had before. Even amongst the fear that they've had, the terror that they've had with things they can't control, Jesus is saying to them, it's okay, I'm here. It is I, the Son of God, someone that can control those things. I am here. See, the crazy thing about this to me is I don't want to stop there, because you know what happens next? Peter then is talking to Jesus, and he says, God, if you call me, if you command me, I will come out into the water. So Jesus says, come. So Peter goes onto the water, and he starts walking on water, right? Pretty crazy. But then Peter, right after, he says this, but when he saw the wind, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You of little faith, he said, why did you doubt? Crazy, right? He talks about, like before we talked about ye of little faith. And then why did Peter doubt? Well, let me tell you this. I believe this. He doubted because Peter got caught up in his fear, and he forgot the power of Jesus. He forgot the presence of who Jesus is, and he was there with him. But he started looking towards the winds and the waves and got afraid. So he is paying attention more to that than who Jesus is. So, see, for the disciples who love Jesus, right, we see later on the story, Jesus is resurrected. This isn't just a surprise for them, but it means everything to them. The world's still crazy, right? Jesus resurrected, world's still crazy, but because of the resurrection, now the disciples, anyone that believes in Jesus, don't have to be controlled by their fear. Those chains are broken. They don't have to be subdued by that fear. So Jesus, his words make sense. Fear not, right? All these stories, fear not, because he is Lord. So the thing is, we all know that fear is something crazy. And all right, God, fear not. Now what? What do I do? So Peter, actually, one of Jesus' closest people, he comes to an understanding, and he actually tells us in a piece of scripture, and actually 1 Peter, a book that he wrote, he tells us what to do when we're afraid. And it says this, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. That's 1 Peter 5:7. When Peter says cast, he doesn't mean like, here you go, Jesus, take a little bit. He says throw it on, hurl it, chuck it. If you play any sports, football, baseball, volleyball, whatever, soccer ball, like you guys, you chuck those things, you kick it hard. He's saying hurl. He says cast your anxieties on him because he cares for you. Remember the whole worth more than 2 pennies kind of thing? Again, he cares for you. So because of Jesus, fear does not have to be the boss of you. So with wrapping up, going into this week, this is what I want you guys to remember, right? First, I want you to remember and then do these things. First, remember that the power and presence of Jesus in your life. Remember that. Jesus, if you believe in Jesus as your Lord and Savior, he has power and presence in your life. Remember that. Then 2, know that your fears don't scare him. They don't. No matter how much you think it does, Those fears do not scare Jesus. Remember the disciples on water? Fearful. Jesus remained calm. Even when he was sleeping, he remained calm. Now I want you guys to do these things. So first, name whatever it is that you're afraid of. Write it down. That's step 2, write it down. Write what you're afraid of. Then I want you guys to throw it at Jesus. I don't know if that's a literal sense. Maybe you just need to take that moment and just chuck it at Jesus, but I need you guys to throw your fears at him. Remember, cast your anxieties on to Jesus because he cares for you. And then the last one, I want you guys to talk to your small group leader about your fears. That might mean scary at first, but bringing people in to talk about it is very vital, and we need to talk about our fears. We can talk to God, but sometimes he doesn't talk straight back to us, right? Jesus isn't walking with us anymore. They have that ability to talk to him, but talk to someone. Talk to them about your fears. So to wrap up today, guys, I want you to remember that because of Jesus, those fears, those emotions, those vibes that you get don't have to be in control of you. Because of Jesus, you have control of it. So they don't have to be the boss of you. And remember, go talk to your small group leader. Cast your fear, cast your anxiety on Jesus because he's bigger.
Thank you so much for watching our Orchard Students Ministry YouTube channel. But don't stop there. Hit the subscribe and like button so you don't miss any of our content. And also share this with any of your friends and family. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook to keep up to date with upcoming message series and events. Thank you again for watching, and God bless you.